Hi everyone, welcome to today's blog as we share together this sort of penultimate chapter of Philip Yancey's book on prayer, and we're looking this time at what's called prayer and me, and the way we're influenced by prayer. And today's little section is about the therapy of prayer. Well, what does that look like? Well, one of the things I love about the book of Psalms, there's many things I love about the book of Psalms, but one of the things I love is the way they capture virtually every human emotion that we have under the sun. There's the highest highs to the lowest lows, the greatest dreams to the utmost despair, from the happy days and sunny days to the very rainy days. And in amongst all that rain and pain can be anger and resentment and bitterness and hurt, emotions that we find very difficult to voice to ourselves, or we can use to justify ourselves, let alone bring before God. And yet here is the psalmist saying that within his experience of prayer, that he can be this honest, this open. You don't just have to be polite with God. I'll give you one example. There are loads actually, but one of the most well-known psalms, Psalm 139, and amongst everything else that it says, and it's full of beauty and wonderful words about God has known me from the very beginning of time, that he knows my east and my west, he knows everything about me. He wants the very, very best for me. Excuse me. He then, towards the end of the psalm, says this: "If only you, O God, would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. For they speak only of evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name, O God. Do not hate those who hate you, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you. I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them as my enemies." And then the psalmist almost has the cheek, or the boldness, the brashness to finish the psalm by saying, "Search me then, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way that is everlasting." In other words, every thought I've had is absolutely perfect in your sight, and yet he's just been able to say those very brazen and hard words about hating those who hate you and wanting them basically to be slain, and etc, etc. People will pay literally hundreds, if not thousands of pounds to counsellors to have them help them get the ability to say, "You've made me angry, you've made me upset, you've hurt me." And yet here is the psalmist pointing a way where we can bring all these things before God, not simply to justify ourselves in our hurt or our pain, but actually, strangely, to offer them back to him. And one of the ways that this section talks about being able to do that is the idea of prayer walking, even up a mountain. And there is something about movement in this, where being able to go for a walk, if you feel able to, where the rhythm or the action of physical exercise can really help take your deep hurts and pains and lay them out there before God. And I've got a funny feeling that might be what Jesus also did up his mountain when he used to go up to the mountain to pray. I know we've got this wonderful image where Jesus must have been so at one with God and so serene, and it was beautiful, just like the Mount of Transfiguration. But maybe just other times he went up the mountain too, where he's going, those disciples, they're doing my head in. They really don't get it. They can only understand this much when I'm talking about this much. And I'm sure we perhaps don't like to think of God and Jesus being like that. Maybe partly because we think he may well be like that with us. We only really get this much, when actually he's talking about this much. If only we could but understand. What I find is that prayer in this way, it's not necessarily a therapy, but the therapy becomes the byproduct of hanging out with God. So it's not just at this time of when I'm feeling hurt or bereft or in bitterness that I pray. And it's not even that by bringing that before him, that somehow he just makes it all better. There's something deeper that goes on, which is about the physical time and space of trusting the process of meeting with God in the here and now, and just doing it. Just doing it. However you pray, however I pray, highs, lows, all the different emotions, just trusting the process of being in his presence. Strangely, what happens is, instead of then seeing the other person as simply the adversary or the person who's my opposition, it becomes two people, brother and sister, bringing ourselves before somebody who's got an even bigger perspective, a bigger understanding of the whole situation. It means I can be more able to then accommodate their perspective as well as my own within God's perspective, of which it is an enormous perspective. Because he loves it all. He loves that person just as much as he loves me, or he loves you. In that way, new understanding, new compassion, new empathy can actually grow. As I say, not as a direct decision of trying to look for these things, but as a byproduct, if you like, of just hanging out with God. And for that purpose, prayer is probably number one about what is needed in the world today, not just in the church, but in wider society and culture. As we seek to emerge from this pandemic, prayer is perhaps the greatest therapy there is. Not because we can simply just go and get answers from God, but bit by bit, by hanging out with him, we take on his character and his nature. As a gentleman called Henri Nouwen, who's a great speaker about prayer of a former day, used to say, it changes my incidental things of my day into a deep understanding of the variety and depth of God. And that was a beautiful thing. So I would encourage you in your prayer life. I would encourage your prayer life both for its purpose, which is to meet with God, but also just to smile to yourself that out of it, bit by bit, without almost noticing it, we too become changed, and we too can hopefully soften our hearts and develop more the nature and character of God. For it was one of his promises through the prophet Isaiah, "I will take their hearts of stone and make them into hearts of flesh," he said. Have a good rest of the day, and may God bless you. Bye for now.